Tēnā rā tātou e ngā mana nui o tēnei motu o tātou Aotearoa. Kia ora everyone. It's a real privilege and an honour to be here with you today to talk about the title of my kōrero, He Hara te manu, ko taku ringa te manu. And I've deliberately taken this particular kōrero, which is from Te Whiti o Rongomai, and it forms part of a poi where Te Whiti o Rongomai poses the question, He hara te manu, ko taku poi te manu. Who is the messenger? Who is the agent of change? It is my poi. And Tohu and Te Whiti use the poi as a tool and a vehicle to inspire our people of Taranaki to record traditions, to record narratives, to record both the pain and the opportunity that our people experienced. After that it says, He hara te manu, ko taku ringa te manu. And it's a beautiful kōrero because it instructs us that we are the agents of change. It is for us to act, to have conviction, to have courage, to do the things that need to be done. So if we think about the concept of a manu, we know within Te Ao Māori, manu are wonderful, beautiful things because they are able to transcend aspects of what happens on the ground. They're able to dream, to imagine the possibilities. And of course, our tupuna used feathers and other things as symbols of mana and rangatiratanga. And so the question I have for you today is, He hara te manu, ko koe te manu? Are you the manu? Are you the messenger? Are you the change agent? Do you have conviction? I want to talk today by drawing on some of the aspects that have shaped me, not only as an individual, but as part of a collective. And I love this particular kōrero from our tupuna because it reminds us that we are wonderful. It reminds us that the ancient wisdom, the tupuna wisdom that our tupuna have left us has value, has place, had value in place for them, but it also has value in place for us. And when we think about that we are the living faces, we are the descendants of these tupuna, we're able to draw inspiration from their acts, from what they achieved. And recognising that our tupuna achieved an amazing feat, the greatest feat of all humankind when they traversed the Pacific Ocean to come to this place, to their new home, Aotearoa, and to marry, of course, those of us that emanated and came from the belly of our mountains like we did in Taranaki. And so it's a beautiful thing, and it's a belief. And so it reminds us to understand and know our tupuna, and I heard Baden earlier this morning refer to his particular tupuna. But this statement instructs us to go back to those foundational narratives, to think about whakatau pōtiki, to understand tāwaki, to know the Māori narratives, to understand the lived experience of tohu, of te whiti, of some of our tupuna who overcame challenge and sort of sought prosperity. And so this statement records the fact that we are all part of a collective lived experience. When we come onto our marae, you will hear in whai kōrero, hara mai rā koutou te kanuhi ora o koutou mātua i te pō, o koutou tupuna i te pō. When we arrive, we are the living faces of all of those generations, of all of our tupuna. I'd always say to scientists that we knew about DNA well before Pākehā, because we reference that. When we see someone, we acknowledge your ancestor, we acknowledge the fact that you are the living face of those that have departed us. And so I want to sort of really talk about something that has really shaped me as a person, as an individual. This particular kōrero, kia au ki tō marae, mā tō marae ka kia koe he tangata, was a kōrero that my tupuna, te kepa Tuuta, would often speak of to his children and his grandchildren, and it was something that was basically imparted to us, the future mokopuna. I was fortunate to live and be raised in a small community in Urenui, Taranaki, a beautiful place. We say that's where the sun always shines. But our whānau had a deep connection to our marae. My koro eke, my grandfather, my grandparents who raised me would always reference this particular kōrero. And they would say that it is by being an active member and serving our pā, our marae, that we become a whole person. And so just think about that. Kia au ki tō marae, mā tō marae ka kia koe he tangata. It actually speaks about service. And I heard Atawhai talk about leadership and service. And what is it? And this is what it is. It's about serving. And when we think about the marae environment, it's about understanding the roles and responsibilities, the obligations we have, whether that be at the hangi pit, whether it be in the kouta, or whether it be like Baden and Tātere who sit on the paepae and who have never picked up a tea towel. But that's okay, because this instructs us that we all have a role. But it also reminds us that we need to master that role. And to master, and mastery is an ongoing challenge and an ongoing opportunity, because we're constantly learning. But the beautiful thing about this kōrero is it instructs us to have aroha. And I heard my tuahine talk about, how might we have aroha? Because as the old people said, it's hard to be kind and it's hard to be good. Te Whiti always was drumming that into our people. My uncle Tiki Raumati, he'd always say it's hard to be good. And it is, because we're human beings. And temptation's a terrible thing. But it talks about aroha and it talks about relationships. And so that's what I love about this kōrero, because from a young child, I was able to witness service in action. From a young child, I was able to see leadership in every aspect and domain of the marae environment. My grandfather was one of the hangi men. And he was thrust into the paepae role because one of his older brothers was living down at Parihaka, and he had said that he now needed to take the mantle of sitting on the paepae, something that he reluctantly did because it was a very uncomfortable space for him. But he did it because we have a responsibility and an obligation to do the things that need to be done. Kia te tuki tēnei kōrero, kia au ki tō marae, mā tō marae ka ki a koe e tangata. And another kōrero which I think has shaped our collective lived experience in Taranaki is this particular kōrero. He puawai au no runga i te tikanga, he rau ringa ringa no roto i te raukura, ko taku raukura he manawa nui ki te ao. Which is beautiful, because what it says is I am a product of a lived experience. Today we think of tikanga as tikanga applying to the marae, but tikanga is actually a way of life. A way of life, the tikanga we live by. And so I am the fruition of a lived experience. He rau ringa ringa no roto i te raukura. My raukura, this emblem, this feather, is a symbol of salvation, but it inspires me, and I can draw strength and inspiration from the raukura for what it signifies in the philosophy of the raukura. And so it is that healing herb, he rau ringa ringa. And so in any leadership position or any role where we're providing service, we must always look for those things that give us strength, that give us conviction, that give us courage, that give us the will to continue on despite the challenges that we face. Ko taku raukura he manawa nui ki te ao. This concept of manawa nui is a beautiful thing. It talks about resilience. And when we think about our tupuna, they were exemplars of this thing called resilience. But my raukura will show me the light in the darkness. My raukura will find goodness in something that's bad, particularly with my own relations. And so it is a symbol of strength, because my raukura reminds me of what I must do, how I must behave, and how I can contribute to the well-being and the greater good of my whānau, of my hapu, of my iwi, of my community, to advance kaupapa that benefit our collective. And I love this kōrero. Te rangihiro, Sir Peter Buck, he's interesting. Some say he was lucky to get away from Aotearoa. Our old people said he needed to leave Aotearoa New Zealand because he could not be the person and contribute to the things that he needed to by staying here in Aotearoa New Zealand. But pai tēnei kōrero, ki ngā tai tamariki o te iwi kia kaha kia maia, waia ngā taumata o te ao hou. E kore eke te ahau a taumata i te koroingo noi o, engari mā te werewera o ho koutou kanohi, ko aua taumata ngā koha o te pukumahi, o te ngākau nui, o te manawa nui. Who would have thought hard work, unyielding courage and determination is a koha, right? So our mindset, I heard the words decolonisation and how we re-indigenise ourselves. But an example here from Te Rangi Hiro, which he says to the younger generation, I wish you all success. Success cannot be attained by resting on the doings of our ancestors, but by your own determined efforts. Success is the reward of hard work, sustained effort, and unyielding courage. So he reminds us that we all have work to do, that we can't rest on the laurels of our tupuna. Our tupuna may have been great, but it instructs us that we too must be great. And Uncle Api Mahuika always used to say to me, Jamie, what's wrong with being great? What's wrong with being great? And I used to say to Uncle, I said, yeah. I said, you're right, Uncle. What's wrong with being great? Because I think we tend to overthink some of our own whakatauki, that a potato doesn't peel itself or the kumara doesn't speak of its own sweetness. But we need to ensure that we encourage and we celebrate the success that individuals and collectives achieve. And we've got to be happy for our relations when they are successful. We need to. But you know, because all of us start to think, we get a bit jealous and envious. Right? He pono he nei kōrero. And so it requires us to really think about our mindset. We need the resilience mindset, but we need a mindset that celebrates and acknowledges success. But importantly, it reminds us that things don't come easy. And so if you want to be on a board, or you want to be a leader, or you want to serve, you need to work. You can't just sit there and be a tickle. You need to be present. You need to be active. And importantly, you need courage, unyielding courage, as Te Rangi Hiro sort of instructs. So part of my kōrero is change. And it's interesting because, change is an inseparable part of nature. We have the changing seasons, weather, changes in the day. Our natural world is constantly changing. So change is everywhere around us, but for some reason, we as people resist change. But remember, we are part of nature too. So it is a constant, and change is both rewarding and challenging. And we have big and small change, and we are constantly tweaking, I know I am, or responding and reacting to change. Changes in culture, politics, we heard around the current government, technology, preferences, markets, attitudes, mindsets. Furthermore, there is always the opportunity to improve something in our own lives. Right? And we should understand that. We're not perfect, and we can continue to grow, to develop. And so as individuals, but also as organisations, there is always the opportunity to be better. But as I say, people fear change when it is sudden. But incremental change, not so. And so therein lies a bit of a tip about change, whether it be at an organisational level or at a board level, to think about the reaction and the response of the emotions of people who are affected by change. Because if you don't, they will feel threatened, and we know what happens when people feel threatened. And we've seen this recently because we've seen our response to the threats, the sudden threats and change of this current government. But I just want to say that remember that change is not just a part of life, it is the opportunity for growth and progress. Think about our tupuna, those of our tupuna that left Hawaii. What did they imagine? What did they see? What were they looking for? Think about your own experiences within your own community, within your own hapu, your own marae, within your own iwi. The thing is that our tupuna were open to change and possibilities, and as a consequence of that, they achieved amazing things. And so I think we can achieve amazing things too, if we have the right mindset and attitude towards change. But navigating change is a challenge. And when I think about change in the context of governance and governing, people always ask me, What are the secret ingredients to being a good governor and a board member? It starts with being a good person. It starts with being a good communicator. It starts with being able to relate and communicate with others. It starts with having an open mind. It starts with having a mindset of resilience. It starts with having an open heart and an open mind to new whakaaro and new ideas. But the thing about navigating change for organisations is there's no one way of good governance, right? It depends on the organisation, its context, its history, the skills and board members, where that particular organisation is in its lifetime in terms of the maturity of the organisation. But the key thing is governance is governance. Governance is governance. Whether you're at the PA, on the dreaded marae committee, or whether you're a board member of a multinational company. So I've always been a believer in the importance of organisations needing to understand their way. So if I think about an organisation, if I think about a company, what is the company way? What is the personality of the company? What are the traits, what are the characteristics of the company? And how are those traits, how are those characteristics, how is that personality reflected both internally and outwardly to the world at large? We know we have legal duties and obligations as governors, but importantly, for me, the most important part of governance or navigating change is that we need to articulate our reason for being. Our purpose, the values that guide what and how we do things, ideally the values that speak to the kaupapa and the people involved in the organisation. And it's easy to talk about these things, but it's very challenging and hard to put them into practice. And because we all know the values are always great until we disagree with something. The principles we behave and we live by through the organisation are always great until we have a dispute and we want to use the law or tikanga to hurt our fellow board members and our fellow people. And so before I finish, I just want to leave you with some questions. So how might you succeed in governance? So the poi said, "Hiaha rā te manu," and it speaks about responsibility and obligation and the foundations of leadership. And as I said, I'm a big believer that if you are looking to embark on your governance journey, you need to know and understand yourself. So when you're thinking about a board, do you know and understand yourself? Who are you? What do you offer? And I invite you to think about what has shaped you as an individual or as a collective, as a whānau. What is important to you? What gives you purpose? What has meaning? And I want you to consider how you have impact, because it is the answer to all of these questions and these things that endures and will make you a good governor. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Te reo te uru, te reo te raukura. Jamie, tēnei mātou mihi nei kia koe, tēnā koe, o tira, tēnā koutou o koutou mātua tūpuna. Homai anō te pakipaki whānau.